a new opportunity for companies to go ham on handheld designs. Everyone and their gamer mom already shared their best handheld of 2024 list last year. By the way, this is mine. But I wanted to use the new fresh year as an opportunity to talk about my personal, subjective wish list for retro handhelds in 2025. This will be mainly about form factors, because if I'm being honest, I don't know much about tech stuff like CPUs, GPUs, chips, OS, etc. Of course, I know the buzzwords, H700, G99, Snapdragon and so on, but I just know enough to kinda get an idea of what consoles and games the handheld is capable of emulating. So without further ado, here is my retro gaming handheld wishlist for 2025. Portable NDS emulation. Software-wise, NDS emulation is pretty much flawless and works great even on budget devices. You can play it almost perfectly on your Mio Mini Plus and all Anbernic XX devices. And of course, it's no problem at all for Android devices because awesome emulators such as Drastic and Melon DS are readily available. Just now I said almost perfect, right? The reason I said that is not a compatibility issue nor any software limitations, in my opinion. The thing that makes NDS emulation always almost great is the haptic feeling of the device it's played on. To this day, in my opinion, NDS games are best enjoyed on the Nintendo DS, and to be more specific, the Nintendo DSi XL for the biggest and best screens. But as examples to show the opposite, for the GBA or the PSP that is simply not the case. The OG handheld was so flawed from the beginning, having no lit screen. And then the later versions with backlit screens are getting unreasonably expensive nowadays. So I much prefer playing GBA games either on my Revo K101 or any other modern emulation handheld. It's a similar thing for PSP games. While the PSP had a big and nicely backlit screen, it was lacking something crucial for gameplay. And that is the right analog stick. I don't have a problem with the left slider. It's quite small but still does its job. But playing, for example, my favorite PSP game, Monster Hunter Freedom Unite, is just super annoying that you cannot adjust the camera with a second stick and have to use the claw grip to adjust the camera with the D-pad. I know, back then we just had to deal with it, but since I've experienced playing these games with 2 analog sticks now, I honestly don't want to go back anymore. Okay, if I was in a life-threatening situation, my family was kept held hostage and the criminal would keep a gun to my head saying, "Here, use this PSP and slay Tigrex with only the Mafo armor. If you fail, I bet you know what will happen with your family." I wouldn't be like, "Oh no, this is the original hardware, can I play it on my Anbernic RG405M so I can use the second stick to adjust the camera?" No, I would just do it right away, because A, this is a life and death situation, and B, I'm just that good at the game. Anyways, back to my point about NDS emulation. So, in the case of GBA and PSP games, emulation handhelds actually enhance the convenience due to modern hardware standards. However, since the NDS is such a quirky device having 2 screens, one of them being a touchscreen, there never has been a very comfortable and efficient way to play NDS games on emulation handhelds. I know, on devices with big screens you can have the 2 screens side by side, display only one screen, have one screen bigger than the other, etc. But I'm not a fan of that. Even though I play a game which does not require the second screen at all times, I still prefer to have the view of both screens stacked on top of each other. And in my opinion, the best handhelds for that are the ones with a 1:1 screen ratio. Among those, the very best is probably the RG Cube, because it also has a touchscreen and feels the most comfortable due to its grips. But still, I would understand if people argue that the screens in a vertically stacked configuration are too small. I can see that, especially with text-heavy games. Nonetheless, in my opinion, the RG Cube up until now is the best handheld for NDS emulation. However, when I was playing around with my RG35XXH, I was thinking, why can't I just play NDS games in Tate mode? So I installed MuOS on it. because it was the only OS I knew that featured a version of Drastic that allowed Tate mode. After reassigning the buttons and testing out some games, I noticed the biggest flaw of this idea. Where the heck do I assign the shoulder buttons? This is probably the biggest issue you'll come across when trying to play NDS games in Tate mode on a horizontal device. That's the reason I am so excited for the Magic X XU Touch 1. It pretty much solves this issue by locating extra L and R buttons at the top and the bottom of the device. So when you hold it vertically, you can press these buttons with your index fingers. While I think this is definitely a very clever idea because it will keep the console slim and pocketable due to the candy bar design, I'd still like to present another approach. If any of those cool handheld designers are watching, here would be my idea for designing the extra L and R button placement for Tate mode on a horizontal device. Here's my RG405M with this clip-on grip case. As you can see, it's still very slim and thus pocketable. So what if we locate the L and R buttons for Tate mode not on the bottom and top edge of the console, but on the inside of those grips? That would mean in Tate mode, you would not need to extensively stretch your index fingers to reach the shoulder buttons. You would use the shoulder buttons similar to a normal vertical handheld. I mean, look at the RG Cube. Okay, the RG4056H would be a better example, but I don't have this one yet. But I would love to get it in the future. Maybe when it's on sale. It has some nice grips to hold the console. So if there would be two buttons like the ones on the Steam Deck or Ein Odin 2, we would have a nice solution for shoulder buttons in Tate mode. I mean, I can't be the very first one who thought of that, right? I'd be happy if any of the handheld companies would realize that. And I know. Magic X leaked their XU Touch 0, which would probably be perfect for NDS games with its pseudo 2DS form factor and vertically oriented screen. But there is only one stick, which I kinda find disappointing, because you can't rotate it 90 degrees. By the way, here are some early designs from the Revo company, which was under Max Joe, who is now the guy from Anbinic. Do with this info whatever you want. And recently, there was this teaser of the One X Sugar that revealed a transformable dual-screen handheld. To be honest, I'm very intrigued by this one, but the design is so obscure, I really want to wait for prototype footage to not get my hopes up too soon. PSP Go/Xperia Play clone. Now to a topic I'm super passionate about. Why is there no handheld with PSP Go form factor? Or Xperia Play if you want. In my opinion, the best OEM, mainstream, major brand or whatever you want to call it, gaming handheld that can be modified for retro gaming is the PSP Go. If you like some more tinkering, then you could consider the Xperia Play as well. But overall, the PSP Go is a complete package. It's super compact due to its slide mechanism and has the specs of the almighty PSP, which means emulating everything up until PS1 is no real problem. And cool people out there are still developing ports for the PSP. However, the reason why I could never recommend getting a PSP Go and Xperia Play nowadays is that these handhelds have become very expensive, for an outdated console, that is. On eBay, in my country at least, you have to pay 150 euros minimum for a used PSP Go, and an Xperia Play is very hard to find. I was lucky that I picked mine up years ago, when the prices weren't so awfully inflated. So we definitely need an emulation handheld with this form factor and slide mechanism. I mean, basically they would just need to add 2 more shoulder buttons, an analog stick to the right and swap the memory card slot to a SD card one. And boom! We would have a banger of a handheld. Maybe even use a bigger screen, a nice 5-inch 16:9 or 4:3 one. To me, playing PSP games stretched on a 4:3 ratio screen is no problem at all. That's why I can enjoy PSP games on my RG405M. Thankfully, the M-Con is about to be released soon, which if you think of it is quite insane. It took a young guy to realize a sliding mechanism for mobile gaming, while all those handheld companies just keep reiterating the same thing they always do. And yes, there is the Neo slider and the GPD Win 4, but it would be nice to have such a handheld in an affordable price segment. Horizontal Game Boy Color clone. If you look closely at my favorite handhelds of 2024, you might have seen the Revo/Anbernic K101 Plus in blue as honorable mention. Even though quite outdated, to me it is just a great console to play physical cartridges. And as a third wish, I would love to see a horizontal, aka landscape handheld clone of the Game Boy Color. Recently, I've started to collect physical games, and personally, I prefer horizontal consoles over vertical ones, and that's why I don't really enjoy playing my GBC for Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges. There is the Frog Boy Color, which is very likely an awesome handheld, but it's really not cheap, even if I were to buy the materials on my own and would build it myself, which I don't know if I could do, because it requires some advanced soldering skills. So this would be an option if I was ever to hit the lottery. I would love to have a horizontal version GBC that can play actual cartridges. If Analog or now Chromatic would release a new horizontal console that can play GBC or even GBA cartridges as well, I'd even consider getting those. But for now, since every handheld they created is only vertical, I don't want to spend that much money on them. A new original handheld. Sadly, the handheld gaming market we used to know and love is pretty much done. The Nintendo Switch is a hybrid console and the PlayStation Portal is a streaming device. In my opinion, the 3DS and Vita era was the very last dedicated handheld console generation. My fourth wish on this list is a new generation of handheld consoles. But to be honest, I wouldn't even know what that would look like, because we live in an age now in which AAA titles can be easily played on the go, like on the Steam Deck or other handheld PCs. Maybe I'm just too nostalgia-driven right now, but I'd really like to see the handheld market continue. Apparently, there were leaks about Sony having started development on the Vita too, but only time will tell. Accessories. Okay, we were mostly talking about concrete handhelds. So last but definitely not least, I want to talk about accessories. Guys, a lot of people just underestimate how important this topic is. I already mentioned in my EDC video that I use a sling bag, because that makes it easier to take, among other things, my handheld with me. Of course, a deciding factor for plenty of people is the size, because that correlates with the pocketability of the device. But to me, I just hate carrying around too many things in my pockets. The only things I carry around in my pockets are my phone and earbuds, but it's actually changing more and more because I start to prefer the freedom of empty pockets and start to carry everything in my sling bag. So I'd love the companies to make much more handheld accessories that would help to take your handhelds around with you. And no, I don't count these cheap, run-of-the-mill zip bags, pouches or thin leather thingies that come with the consoles. No, I'm talking about stuff that actually has some thought behind it. To be honest, the Etsy shops do a much better job at that. I just want to bring forward some ideas I had in mind. I don't care who creates them, I just want to get them at a fair price so I can buy them soon. The first idea is about these cheap leather pouches that came with the RG35XX SP. Well, not with mine. I got mine separately and paid extra. They are okay quality-wise, but they need a belt loop. If they had a belt loop, they would be so much more useful. Because I could carry the RG35XX SP much easier with me. I wouldn't even need to use any space in my pocket or bag. You don't even need to put it on your belt. I would actually put it on the strap of my sling bag. This way I would save some space in my sling bag and my RG35XX SP would be quickly accessible. I know there is a 3D printed belt clip on Etsy, but it would be nice to have something that covers the whole device. And yes, there is this RG35XX SP belt holder clip STL you can find online. But guys, I'm just a consumer and don't have my own 3D printer and stuff. I just would like to get it fully done instead of getting all the material to create it myself. The next idea I have would be similar to those phone cases with attached rope thingies. Do you remember those? They were all the hype in the summer a few years ago. Basically, it's a phone case that has a long rope loop attached to the bottom. And this design is so simple but quite genius. We should apply this to more retro handhelds. There was actually that kind of thing for the GBC and GBA years ago, and I actually do own it for the GBC, but it has a certain flaw. The rope/lanyard thing is attached on the top, which is cool because you can show off your console the right way, but if you want to actually play your console, you'll have to twist it down and have to deal with the lanyard. So if we could get either the companies or Etsy shops to create something like a silicone case that has a lanyard attached on the bottom for multiple device models, that would be fantastic. This is my personal, subjective retro emulation handheld wishlist for 2025. In my opinion, we as the consumers should be more vocal about our wishes and ideas concerning the gaming and emulation handhelds. I mean, we are the ones who will buy them in the end. And we all joke about how new handhelds are released every month. But why should we not let the companies know what we actually want, instead of just praying and hoping they will come to the ideas all by themselves? My channel is not a big platform, but I at least wanted to share my thoughts and would also be interested in what you would like to see in the upcoming handheld market, be it form factor, technical specs or even accessories. I'd be interested to read your comments. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And if you're interested in why having multiple gaming handheld devices can be a good thing, then check out this video here. Okay, see you, bye. Hey, I did it! Well, too bad, kiddo.